Women make up an important segment of most markets. Yet, all too often, companies design their products and services for an average individual, which can mean that women's needs and contexts are not understood or catered for. And this is a missed opportunity. In our previous video, we introduced you to a business-first approach to gender inclusion. We spoke about the ways in which businesses, of all types and sizes, can develop gender-forward strategies that suit their context, and how this can have positive social and business impact. You may remember that we touched on the 3 possible entry points for businesses aiming to become more gender-forward, namely the workforce, market, and value chain. And in this video, we'll focus on the second entry point, your market. Women customers present an important market opportunity. For example, in Southeast Asia, women make up to 80% of household purchases. And by 2028, it is expected that women will control 75% of discretionary spending in the world. This means 75% of all spending on non-essential items. Usually this means all the spending that happens after people have paid for rent, electricity, water, and transport. Finally, traditional gender roles mean that women tend to not only make most of the household purchases, but they also make many decisions about how the household is run, including how the household manages their waste, for example. Yet, despite the fact that women are such an important market opportunity, products and services are often designed in a so-called gender-neutral way. This means that designers assume that women and men both engage with their products in the same way, so that products don't need to be designed for a specific gender. Unfortunately, this often means that women are left out. This isn't intentional, and it also doesn't mean that product designers, sales, or marketing individuals are discriminating against women on purpose. It simply means that certain parts of women's contexts and needs might be hidden for a team that is not specifically working to uncover those insights. In other words, because the team doesn't pause to ask, how do women engage with this product? And how do men engage with this product? And how is that different? What often ends up happening is that the male experience is assumed to be the average experience. This is also sometimes referred to as the male default, which means that by default, data or insights about men are taken to be applicable to the whole population. I can imagine this feels a bit abstract, so let's consider these examples. Most passive phone-based tracking apps, such as exercise monitors or step counters, are designed for people that carry phones in their pockets, but they don't work for the many women who carry their phones in their handbags. In another example, a community health project in informal settlements in South Africa designed a smartphone app for community workers. Unfortunately, it wasn't widely used, because using a smartphone while traveling on public transport was considered too dangerous. And that is how most community health workers, who were mostly women, moved around. And finally, did you know that women are almost 50% more likely than men to be seriously injured in car crashes? But when doing car crash tests, manufacturers are only required to use male dummies, so cars aren't designed to better protect women's bodies. So clearly, it is important to take into consideration the gender of your customers in your design process. After all, you want to make sure your products meet their needs. However, better understanding your women customers goes beyond product design and can also influence the way in which you communicate with them, which could even save you time and money. So consider this example, based on a real company's experience. A pay-as-you-go solar company in Kenya spotted a problem in their customer service department. Whenever they sold a solar unit, an agent would take the customer through a purchase education process, basically explaining to the customer how to use and care for the product. This process ran smoothly, and they felt customers came away with all the knowledge they needed. But the customer service department noticed something odd. Over 1/3 of all calls they received actually dealt with questions that were covered in the purchase education process. So, was the purchase education process not doing so well after all? The answer was, the purchase education process worked fine, but it was given to the wrong people. When analyzing the data on their customers in a sexist aggregated way, so splitting out data on women and men, the company realized that the majority of the people who bought the product were men, but that 83% of the people that used the product at home were women. Less than half of the people buying the product were the people that ended up using the product, and those end users that were not the ones doing the buying never received the purchase education. Realizing this, the company adjusted their purchase education scripts and made sure that their agents also spoke to the end user of the product, especially if the person making the purchase wasn't a woman. This ended up saving the customer service center a lot of time, as they received 33% fewer calls from end users. The lesson? It pays to think about household structure, household roles, and responsibilities when selling products and when thinking about your company support structures. It also pays to collect sex aggregated data on your customers, as another real-life example shows. In this example, a food business in Central America realized they were not reaching as many women customers as they would like. They aimed to sell to both individual women customers as well as small women-owned shops, but sales to both were lagging. In trying to address this challenge, they realized that they didn't actually know much about the effectiveness of their marketing campaigns, so they didn't know where the problem lay. Their first step was to collect sex-aggregated data on their marketing campaigns and to conduct market research with a gender lens. This then helped them identify in a detailed way which messages reached women, which channels worked, and which products were most interesting for their women customers. From here, they could develop customer personas and adapt their communication approaches. For this company, this exercise led to over 50% more reach on Facebook and over 90% more positive reactions to their messaging. And not only that, their sales also increased by over 40%. Clearly, there are some big wins to be had from taking a moment to just think through the gender of your customers. So, how to get started? At a high level, consider these steps to start understanding and serving your women customers. First, gather sex-aggregated data from the market to understand women customers' preferences and to inform your design. Then, actually design products and services that are specific to women's needs and preferences and work within their contexts. Finally, combine this with gender-inclusive market strategies and messages by focusing both on the message and the channel that would work. I hope you're excited about the opportunities of diving deeper into the lives of your women customers. To get started, I invite you to have a look at the Customer Personas tool or the Gender Inclusive Communications Checklist. I'm sure this will prove an insightful journey.